Now it's time to preview an upcoming game with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everybody, it's Ryan Metzler here again, and today we're going to be taking a look at a Kickstarter preview for a zombie card game called Apocalypze. Now this is a game that's currently up on Kickstarter. They've already reached their funding goal, so already very successful, but they're looking for even more pledges to get the game out to more people so they can hopefully enjoy it. So real quick, we're going to take a look at this game about being a zombie survivalist group trying to out-survive the other survivalist groups. We'll see how the game plays, what the components look like, and a reminder, as always, these are prototype components, but we'll see what they look like and how they serve the functions of the game, and then we'll come back here and I'll sum it all up for you. So here we are looking at the components for Apocalypze. Now this is set up for a two-player game, although the game can accommodate more than two players, but we're going to look at a two-player game with two of the starter decks that you can potentially get if you back this Kickstarter project. Now just a reminder, as always, that these are Kickstarter prototype components. These are not the final quality cards. What you see or what you get in the final game may not exactly reflect these, but the function will be the same. Now, as you can see here, each player starts with a deck of cards, and they start with a location in play. This deck of cards is going to represent the survivors and raiders, the equipment, and various other cards that will help them survive the zombie apocalypse and hopefully out-survive their opponent. In addition, you see that you start with a base. This player starts with a military base, which is going to be their stronghold of operations. And you'll see it has several different characteristics on it. You can see at the top here, it has an access. That is how many entry points there are into this area. Now, the more entry points you have, the easier it is to get out of your stronghold and explore other areas, but the harder it's going to be to defend from raiders from your opponent who are trying to get in. You can see it has a capacity, which is the number of survivors it can hold. It can hold 12 survivors. And you'll see it has a damage, which is 1, which is the damage it's going to take if anybody happens to get through trying to raid your stronghold. In addition, each stronghold is going to have an ability at the bottom that you can use once during a phase or once during a game to do something. For example, this one here says that you can, once during your occupation phase, play a generic soldier here from your deck. So since it's a military base, you can add soldiers to it relatively easily. Now that I've given you the layout here, why don't we cover some of the cards that are going to be in the deck. So in each player's deck, you're going to have several different types of cards, and I already kind of covered that a little bit, but let's take a look at some of them. So we're looking at a military deck here, and in this deck we have some characters, or some survivors, and this one is Corporal Dwayne Martinson. He is a soldier, and he has attack and defense values, and as well as a value. His attack and defense will, of course, be how much he attacks and defends for in combat, but his value is basically his hit points. And in this game, when a character takes damage, if they don't take all of their damage, if he doesn't take 4 damage, he would be recycled to the bottom of the deck. The idea in the game is to keep your deck going, or keep cards in your deck longer than your opponent's. So if you run out of cards, you lose. So going to the bottom of the deck isn't so bad. If he takes full damage, he's going to go to the discard pile, and of course, that card is now out of the game. So you don't want to lose cards. In addition, survivors are going to have some type of benefit. So this guy, when you play him, you can go get a rifle from your deck and attach it to him, which is going to make him stronger. Now we have some more generic cards in the deck. These are basically generic two-fold cards. You can see you can either play them as a good guy, a soldier here, on your own areas, or you can play them as a bad guy, a zombie, on your opponent's areas to try and raid them. And they can, basically attack your opponents, and when they're removed, they get recycled to the bottom of the deck. So that's kind of good if you play them as a zombie. We also have guys that are straight-up zombies. This one is a fast zombie. And he attacks no matter what. Even if there's card effects that are supposed to stop him from attacking, he's going to attack. So you'll see we have some specialized, but not too strong zombies. And then we have very strong zombies. These are unique zombies. You can only have one of them in play, much like the Corporal that I showed you earlier was unique. But he has his own attack and defense values. He's very strong, not so good at defending, and has a few hit points, but not too many. Now, one of the key ideas in this game is trying to get resources back. You may have to get some to the discard pile, but you want to get them back into your deck to survive longer than your opponents. And to do this, you're going to have other locations. These are called scavenging locations, and you'll see on them they have many of the traits of your stronghold. For example, this one has an access of 1, meaning it has 1 entry. It has a capacity of 6, meaning it can hold 6 survivors. And then it has a sections value, which in this case is going to be 6. And you'll see here this 6 is basically going to be the amount of cards you place underneath this. Now these cards come from your discard pile, which means you have to have lost cards in order to play this card to the table. But on your turn you can play this to the table, and if you have 6 cards in your discard pile, take those 6 cards and place it under it. The 6 cards are a requirement, so you must have them. In addition, you can move people from your stronghold to this scavenging location. And each turn they're going to get resources from those sections, be they survivors or weapons or anything else, and they can add them, if they're those things, to the surviving or to the scavenging location, and basically try and recover some resources from your deck or your discard pile. In addition, you can see here that it says when scavenging here, you draw an extra card on your draw turn, and when you finish it, you get to recover 6 cards. That means that you're going to take 6 cards from your discard pile and place them back on the bottom of your deck. So not only are you recovering cards from your discard pile through the scavenging, but when you're done scavenging, you get to add cards back to your deck, which is going to make you survive in the game longer. In order to assist your survivors, you're going to have several different types of cards. For example, here we have a walkie-talkie, which is an attachment that you can play onto one of your characters or one of your survivors. This one is going to allow 2 survivors to communicate back and forth. So basically, it's going to allow you to move people from one location to another, being your stronghold in a scavenging location, in ways that you're not usually allowed to do. So this somewhat breaks the rules by allowing you to move back and forth. Now, we're also going to have cards that don't attach to specific survivors, but may target something in the game, or may not even have a target, but just allow you to do something. And those are called wild cards. These can be played on your turn. They allow you to do various different things. For example, this one here is Recon, and it says that you can look at X cards off of the top of your deck, where X is the number of soldiers in your stronghold. So soldiers are a specific type of survivor. They have a little icon on them. And you can recycle those cards by paying a soldier, recycle meaning to put on the bottom of your deck, and recycling a soldier to put that card on the bottom of your deck. So basically you can discard your soldiers to put the cards from the top of your deck onto the bottom of your deck, hopefully stacking the deck so that you can draw something that you want. So this lets you pay guys from your stronghold in order to stack the top of your deck. Finally, we have cards that are called trumps, and this one is called a sentry. Trumps can be played on your or your opponent's turn, and they basically are instants, like in Magic. So it's an instant card that you can use to interrupt the flow of play and hopefully swing things to your benefit. So this one is the sentry. This one just kind of cancels any trump or wild card that's played on your area. So if it's played on your stronghold, you can use this card to be like, no, you can't do that. I'm essentially canceling it. And then they can respond with their own trumps, maybe canceling yours if they have a way. And a little back and forth like that with a little bit of interrupt play to try and swing things into your own favor. So now that we've covered what kinds of cards are in the deck, we're going to move on and take a look at an example turn or two. Now, the first part of each turn is to draw up to 8 cards. Well, I've already got my 8-card hand to start the game, so I don't need to draw up. And we're going to move on to what's called the occupation phase. In the occupation phase, you essentially decide where you're going to play cards. Either your own locations, and you choose one location. So, for example, on the first turn, I would have to choose my own stronghold. Or on a later turn, I could, for example, choose a scavenging location to play my trumps or wild cards at. Or I can choose one of my opponent's locations. I could choose his roadside diner in order to play raiders at, in order to try and attack him and deplete his deck in order to win the game. Now, as I said, it's the first turn, so I'm going to choose my own military base in order to play some survivors to get the game started. And maybe, for example, I play this Lieutenant Dan Kilmeyer from my hand. And when I play him down, I play him to my stronghold. He's taking up one of my potential capacity spots at that stronghold. But when I do that, he allows me to take one field promotion from the deck and add it to my hand. So I happen to place one on top. I take a field promotion, which is a card that allows me to attach it to another generic soldier and increase their value, their hit points, by 1. And I add that to my hand. Now, I can play as many cards to this stronghold as I want during my turn, so I can look through my hand and see that I have more soldiers. That's great. I can place some of these soldiers down to the table and maybe increase my strength at that area. So let's say I play those 2 and I decide to hold on to these other 2, for example, maybe to attack my opponent on a later turn. After this, I decide that I want to play out a scavenging location. So we see I have this general store here, and it has an axis of 1, a capacity of 6, and a section of 6. Well, I can't play this yet, because I have no cards in my discard pile. And in order to fill up the sections, which are 6, I need to have 6 cards in my discard pile. You won't be playing these early on, but let's just set up an example. Let's say that I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cards in my discard pile, because we were now on a future turn in the game. I could play this out to the table, and I would take these 6 cards, counting off from the bottom of my discard pile, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I would place them underneath this general store. I now have a scavenging location in play. and I'm allowed to move as many survivors as I want up to the capacity of this scavenging location over to that scavenging location in order to look for more resources. So let's say, for example, I decided to send over my 2 soldiers. They're soldiers because I played them on my own area. If I had played them on my opponent's area, they would have had to be zombies, because you can see the zombie is the raider side of this card. Once I'm done playing cards, so we'll see if I have anything else I want to play. I don't want to play that. No, I'm good. I think we're okay with not playing any of these other cards. I would go ahead and go on to the scavenging phase. And I would look and see how many survivors I had over in this scavenging location. Now we can see that I have 2. And so what these guys are going to do is they're going to clear 2 cards from this scavenging location. And they'll flip them over one at a time. This is an attachment and it says attach to any zombie. Well, I don't have any zombies here, so I can't really attach it to a zombie. Unfortunately, not going to work out, so this card gets discarded back to the discard pile. I flip over the next card, and it is a zombie. Well, I can't play a zombie in my own location. That would be bad for me, so it's going to get discarded. Now, if I had flipped over, for example, a walkie-talkie, I could attach this to one of my characters. Or if I had flipped over one of a survivor, if there's any survivors here, I would be able to place that survivor in my location. There are none, so unfortunately I wouldn't get them. Once all of the sections are clear, my guys that are currently scavenging in that location are going to return to the base. So they've figured out that they're done, there's nothing left there, and they're going to return to the base, and they're going to be basically done, and they'll be protecting my stronghold once again. Now, in addition to that, you'll see on the card it says, while people are scavenging here, I draw 1 more. So at the beginning of my turn, I would have drawn 1 more, but more importantly, that I recover cards from my discard pile. So if these cards over here were in my discard pile, they're going to go back on the bottom of my deck, up to 6 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I would place them back on the bottom of my deck, essentially increasing the amount of time that I can stay in the game. After the scavenging phase comes the combat phase, and right now we have no combat because there are no raiders at our stronghold. It's the first turn, and we aren't at anybody else's location in order to have combat. So right now, no combat would occur. We would then move on to the consumption phase, and consumption is basically feeding your survivors. You'll see that you have survivors at your stronghold, and for each survivor that you have at your stronghold, you have to satisfy a condition. In order to satisfy that condition, you must do something for each survivor there. They each need 1 resource, and that resource can be given in several different ways. The first is that you can discard the top card of your deck to your discard pile, 1 card for each survivor there. And you can split these up any way you want, so you could discard 1 card from the top of your deck for your first survivor. You could discard 2 cards from your hand. If you have cards you don't want, you could throw 2 of them away in order to satisfy one of those resources. So now we've satisfied 2 of them. And then you could discard survivors from your stronghold. Their value basically counts for the food. So you'll see he has a value of 6. We could have just discarded him, but we wouldn't want to do that. We'd probably pay another card from the top of our deck. But if we wanted to discard somebody with a value of 1, they could, for example, satisfy the food requirement or the consumption requirement of another character. After this, we would move on to the next player's turn, and they would take their turn likewise. Now, I'm going to set up an example combat just so you can see how it works, and then we're going to go and see what my final summary is of the game. So here we have an example of combat where the player over here has decided to attack the stronghold of our other player that we were looking at throughout the game. So we now have the biker zombies, the gang zombies, attacking the military base. And we can see here that we have 4 zombies on one side and 3 soldiers, well, 2 soldiers and a unique character on the other side. So it's currently the biker zombie person's turn, and they are in their combat phase, attacking this person's stronghold. If there were multiple combats, they would all occur. But right now, we're going to take a look at this unique combat. So what we're going to do first is that the attacker is going to group their attackers into different groupings. So you can have as many groupings as you want up to the number of access here. So there are a certain number of entry points to this area, the military base. There are 6. Well, we only have 4 characters, so we can't split into 6 groups, but let's say they split into 4 individual groups to attack. At this point, our defenders can decide how they want to split up. Maybe they decide to split into 3 separate groups. So they're going to split into 3 separate groups to try and defend as much as possible, leaving one area open. At this point, the attacks are going to resolve, and you're going to compare the attack and defense values of the attacking characters. So, for example, we have a soldier here with an attack of 3 and a defense of 1, and we have a zombie here with an attack of 1 and a defense of 1. Well, the attack 1 from the zombie is going to clash with the defense 1 of the soldier, and nothing's going to happen to the soldier. But the soldier's attack of 3 is going to be 2 more than the defense of this zombie, and he's going to deal 2 damage to this zombie, but the zombie can only take 1 damage. So he's discarded to the discard pile. The soldier is fine, and the same thing is going to happen for this second combat. Over here, we have a slightly stronger zombie. She attacks a little bit harder, but she doesn't defend as well. And we have this stronger soldier who doesn't take any damage, and he, of course, wipes out the zombie. Unfortunately for the military player, though, we have one zombie who's going to get through, and he's going to attack the base directly. And when he does so, he's going to get through, and he's going to deal damage to that base equal to the damage on this card. So you'll see it says damage of 1. Since this guy wasn't blocked, he deals 1 damage to the base, and that's going to be 1 card off of the top of the deck of the military player into the discard pile, furthering them towards the endgame condition of losing the game. Well, there you have it. That is Apocalypse from 9 Kingdoms Publications. A pretty interesting little card game for 2 or more players in which you're trying to outlast the other survivors of the zombie apocalypse. It has an interesting dynamic of choosing where you're going to play your cards for the turn. You can either choose to play your cards on your own area, trying to basically shore up your own defenses, make sure that other players can't get in and attack your deck, or you can take the offensive and try and go over and attack your opponent, trying to break down their deck and get them out of the game faster. Basically, the trick is to balance between the two, or 3 places really: building up your own area, attacking your opponent's area, and going out and raiding or scavenging new areas in order to try and find more resources to replenish your deck. So it's definitely got an interesting aspect there in terms of the play. As I said, they are currently up on Kickstarter. They're already very successful, overachieving their funding goal very quickly, but they're looking to get the game out to even more players who they think can enjoy the game. So if that sounds good to you, go to Kickstarter, check it out, maybe even pledge. That is Apocalypse by 9 Kingdoms Publications.
Thanks for watching our review today. For more information about board games, as well as the #1 board game audio podcast, check out Dicetower.com for reviews, interviews, and more. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.